All right, so let's see. That's good. That's good. All right, Martin. Welcome. How are you?
Good deal. Apart from missing your house by 10 digits, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, we live really close to each other.
Yeah,
It's really, I can't believe it. I had no idea.
I love that stuff. Like it's not, well, is it synchronicity?
Synchronicity. Yeah, I think that would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how random. So I'm just talking in your audio class, and I'm like, yo, Bridgeport. You're like, what?
Yeah, the second
Yeah.
you said Bridgeport, I was
Yeah.
like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's a good
That's where
deal.
I'm at.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for coming here and being on here. And maybe just tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and we'll go into it.
Oh my God. Okay. Started playing drums when I was 9 years old. Joined my first band when I was 11. Started doing cover songs and backing strippers and drinking Newcastle Brown when I was 11 and 12. I joined Public Image Ltd in 1979 when I was just 20. Wow. I spent 5 years in that band, off and on, but 5 years till 85. So I did all, well, I don't know how far you want to get into that.
Oh, everything.
But I think that was the best time to be in Pill, aside from the album before me with Jim Walker, the first album. Then I quit Pill. We did their biggest selling single, This Is Not a Love Song. I wrote and co-produced that. And then I quit. We can go into that.
Yeah.
Then I spent a year and a half, 2 years not drumming. I had my own band, Brian Brain, which had started before PIL. And then I got the call to join Killing Joke. While I was in Killing Joke, I did the Extremities album with Killing Joke. I also started to manage them, work with Ministry on the In Case You Didn't Feel Like Showing Up Cage tour. During that tour, I started Pigface with Bill Rieflin, and that's now my band with 750 members, been going since 1990. Started a band called Murder Inc., The Damage Manual. I started my label Invisible in 1988. We've released 350 albums since then. Started my own studio. I bought Albini's 8-track setup way before Electrical.
Mm-hmm. Steve Albini.
Yeah.
Okay.
His set up from his house on Francisco Street,
Mm-hmm.
and taught myself to engineer, and the studio's grown. And 4 years ago, I started the Museum of Post-Punk and Industrial Music, which is just a few blocks from here, and that's exploded. I teach, been teaching for about 25 years, written 3 books about the music business. I got 4 kids, and I'm a terrible DJ.
Wow. A lot to go through. A
Yeah.
lot. I have so many questions.
Okay.
You've lived one hell of a life. I could say that just from your stories, let alone the things I don't know. Okay, so I guess I wanna ask you more about your home, England, because you said 11 years old, drinking Newcastle
Yeah.
with strippers, hookers.
Backing strippers.
Backing strippers.
Play music for strippers, yeah.
So where you came from? What town? Where are you from originally?
So I was born in Nuneaton, which is close to Coventry, close to Birmingham. We moved to Leeds. My dad was in the textile business, worked his way up from the factory floor, to a manager, and then I don't know what came after that. 10 years night school and a degree later, he's in charge of 3,000 people in Durham, north of England.
Is this when you were a kid? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
the coal mines were on decline, so they moved textile factories into the north of England. So the miners had jobs, and there we were. He bought me a drum kit when I was 9. Somebody at school had told my mom, "Ooh, Martin's a great drummer," which was bullshit. I got the snare drum in class. I could have gotten the xylophone, and they were just making conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Then following week, I think they saw a drum kit at the market, used, battered drum kit, And so my dad gave me a drum kit. And because he was absent, he's working round the clock pretty much with this factory, I played my drums 4 hours a day. And it made me very careful of what I did with my sons. Like I didn't want to give them a drum kit. Harrison, one of my kids, I have 4 boys. One of them asked me for drum lessons. I'm like, nah. Like I'll get you drum lessons, but I wanted them to be able to stop because they hated it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that would be possible. Like that they would be frightened of offending me.
Oh, they wanted you to give them drum lessons.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The conflict of interest there can go deep with problematic stuff.
Yeah. And then here we are. I'm 90 and they're 70. I fucking hate the drums.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell my dad.
You want them to want to do it at their core, not just because they feel bad because father does it. Yeah.
And it's strange for me. I got really good because I was playing a lot. 8 shows a week. The Sunday afternoons with strippers. We did cover band songs and original, trippy, whatever.
Yeah.
In between. So I was playing all the time. And by the time I was 16, I was just a killer.
And you were playing a lot because your dad wasn't around. He's working, so you kind of were able to be loud.
I'd play every night.
What siblings that were they around? No.
Didn't care.
They didn't care.
My
Mom
sister
didn't
was
care?
around. No.
No.
Well, I think they just thought as long as I was banging on the drums, I wasn't in trouble.
Yeah.
Which was also, I'm sure, part of it.
That's a big thing that some parents just kind of let their kid. Did they know they have the potential to go this way? They'll let them be a little crazy that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't around because I was in the van. And we were playing working men's clubs in the north of England.
How did you get these gigs at such a young age? How did you get into that?
There was an ad for a band, and I think my dad thought that was the next step. I should join a band to grow, and he went. It was 2 days of auditions, and he went. It was in a village hall, and he went. And he said, "Hi, my kid is like 11. I just want to come check it out and make sure everything's okay before
What year would this be?
Well,
1970?
62.
1962?
Yeah, I was born in... No. 70.
70.
No. I was born in 59.
Okay. So 70.
Yeah, 70.
All right.
So, under the guise of checking things out, he was checking things out, but then he sees there's a set list on the floor. Mm-hmm. And so he talks to the bass player or something, what's going on, what kind of songs are you doing? And he sees Uriah Heep, something, Thank Christ for the Bomb, Black Sabbath, something. He goes to the bathroom, writes 4 down, comes out, engages somebody in conversation, asks them about 3 other songs, goes to the car, writes those down,
Genius.
Comes home, it's like, okay, you've got an audition tomorrow. We got to find these 7 songs. So I listened to these songs and I knew what I was doing, and I got the
11
job.
years old.
Yeah.
That's not common at all.
But I did exactly the same thing with my job in Pill. I did exactly the same thing. So I was just playing all the time. And I quit that band to play in another band. And then the biggest band in the north of England at that time was called The Mind, M-Y-N-D. They toured Belgium and France. They had a Mercedes truck. They seemed to be playing a lot. Mm-hmm. And when they played at the university in Durham, played to 500 people, I'm like, oh, here we go, Mm-hmm. And I ended up joining them.
Oh, wow.
And
how did that come about?
I think they had an audition. They lost a drummer. I guess I was thinking about it now, ambitious to,
a go-getter.
And I think, and I'd get Melody Maker every week, Sounds, New Musical Express, all the music newspapers, watching Top of the Pops, Old Grey Whistle Test, all the TV shows live and otherwise, watching all these bands on TV.
What was the music scene like 1970-ish where you were at? What was it like back then
Oh,
for
it's
you?
pure pop. ABBA, Elvis Presley was still alive. Starsky and Hutch, David Soul had a hit single. And then you had The Sweet, Slade, all this glam pop, but pop, you know.
Like David Bowie kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But lots of 2-minute, 50, 3-minute, 10 singles, just pop everywhere. Jukeboxes in the pubs were spanning 50 years. You know, George Formby playing ukulele to whatever the newest thing was.
Yeah.
And the pubs were multi-generational. Granddad would be there with the grandkids. And so everybody's listening to all this music all the time, which I think is very different than it is here. Seems like people go to bars to be in their clique. In England, the pub is just the place at the end of the street that
Everyone's there kind of unified together.
Yeah.
I wonder, there's got to be a reason behind that. I think a longer history of suffering and working together. I mean, think about 1959, you're born. Your dad, did he go to World War II?
He didn't serve. But, well, he served domestically. He was in the Fleet Air Arm, which could have been called up.
Yeah.
But wasn't.
Like a reserve. Like
Yeah.
And that was just something normal for a lot of people to do at that time. They didn't really have a choice. Like a lot of guys just had to do it.
And strange, you know, when my grandma died, they found like 300 cans of food under the bed because they had rationing.
It was bad. It was really, I'm sure you heard a lot of stories growing up.
Yeah. And you'd look at the windows of my grandma's house or my mom and dad's house, and there'd be like, sometimes there's still tape on the windows. Sometimes there's just the mark of, you put tape on a window for 4 or 5 years and you still have the mark of the tape. That was when, if any bombs were dropped, the windows, the glass wouldn't just shatter and rain into.
Oh, it would stay together. It would break together and fall.
It was like, okay.
Goodness.
And so you were around that.
That's crazy.
It was quite real.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah, and you probably just had to deal with some of the ramifications after because it took a long time to rebuild that stuff. You know?
Yeah.
Wow. So back to the early 70s, you're in these bands, you're playing a lot, drums. Were you playing any other instruments or just drums?
Just drums.
Just drums. Were you recording any music at this time or just performing?
One of the bands I was in, the main guy had a twin-necked Rickenbacker, 12-string, 6-string, flared sleeves. Like, yes, you know, if we could be yes, oh my God, you know. He had a connection with somebody at Guildford University, which seemed like the other side of the country. It was probably 150 miles away, maybe 250 miles away. We recorded there for a day or two. I don't even know what happened to those tapes or what we recorded. But, and I think we did some recording with The Mind, but at rehearsals to a 1/4-inch machine.
Okay, like practice demos and stuff?
Yeah. But yeah, nothing really.
Okay, so when did that start happening? When did you start getting more studio and recording experience?
That would be Brian Brain, 78.
Okay.
My school friend starts working at R.G. Jones Recording Studio in Wimbledon, and they did Cliff Richard and a bunch of pop, real professional studio. He was the tape op, and I was working for the government off of Trafalgar Square. Moved to London when I was maybe 17.
After high school?
Yeah, a little bit after high school.
Okay.
And so he would call me and say, "Come, you know, they just left. Come on down." We'd stay up all night speeding and using all the instruments and the presets, not touching anything because they were on a lockout.
Yeah.
But using their presets.
Was this under the table? Like you just did?
Yeah, completely.
Seems
under
like
the
you did a
table.
lot of that with studios.
Yeah.
It was much easier back then, it seems.
Yeah.
No
yeah.
security cameras.
And or the more traditional way, you know, Trent was a janitor at the studio. Mike Oldfield, Tubular
Trent
Bells.
Reznor?
Trent Reznor. Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells, was kind of in that role at the Manor of Virgin Records Studio in Oxfordshire. There's all these little subterfuges.
Yeah.
We recorded at a studio called Street Level. It was in a squat. In Maida Vale, I think. So there was a little bit of electricity from next door. There was no running water. I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't care about that when you're young, though.
Right. It's not something I've thought about very much.
Yeah. So you started Brian Brain. Are you the front of it, but you're a drummer? How does that work as a drummer?
I was writing the words, and we put the drums on tape, although one of the tracks, we were immediately wildly experimental. So it turns out if you tap on a D12, it sounds like a bass drum, you know? And so we did that. We're like, oh my.
Like the microphone, did you?
Yeah. It's like, wow, but this is insane, you know?
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
you know? And it was almost like the drums were so familiar to me. Oh, fuck the drums. You know, I'll start this other thing and I'll be the singer, you know? And yeah, that's what Brian Brain
So you started
was.
singing?
Yeah, and screaming and attacking the audience.
So you're not playing drums, you're just singing in this band?
Played drums in the studio, and then we had a quarter-inch machine live.
Do you sing and play drums ever at the same time?
Yeah, I'll do backing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard. It's mostly hard for the sound for the engineers with the bleed, you know, hi-hats and stuff.
Yeah.
You got to be a very certain type of drummer with a certain type of voice that's strong enough to go over, you know what I mean? It can be challenging.
Well, and I mean, it's mainly gang vocals,
Yeah.
choruses, stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's just sometimes it's good to have the reinforcement. It's difficult with Killing Joke because jazz could drift flat very easily. So you're like trying to be somewhere between where you're supposed to be and where he is
Yeah.
to help get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also Killing Joke is difficult because it's so physical. So physical, it's difficult to breathe and sing. So
Yeah. Yeah, you're in a lot of intense bands or more movement, more power, more aggression, louder. So Brian Brain, 78, and then where does that connect to Public Image Limited?
So Pill is one of the reasons I moved to London. I was tired of being in the biggest band in the north of England. You know, it's like being in the biggest band in Danville, Illinois.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Danville, Illinois. I'm not slagging on Danville.
Or Carbondale.
Yeah. So, and so I was looking for auditions. I don't know. Maybe I was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And I arranged 4 or 5 auditions. I didn't have transportation. I didn't drive. My dad arranged for my drums to go down in a truck. And then the people from the first audition were going to take me to the second. And I could stay at their house. And then I was going to get a cab. It was just a mile to the third audition the next day, but I had it all worked out. Well, as soon as I arrive, I get to the first place. They're like, no, we just hired this guy. I'm like, oh, can I still stay here? They're like, nah,
No.
you know.
Yeah.
And so it was just like 3 or 4 auditions. And then Wednesday, I had like £5 left. My dad had given me some money. I had £5 left in my pocket, which seems crazy that I didn't save up for 6 months and go, you know.
Yeah.
So
You're
I
young.
had a Chinese lunch special, and I bought Melody Maker, which came out in London on the Wednesday, didn't come out in the rest of England till the Thursday.
And what is Melody Maker?
It was the big music paper. Bob Dylan would be on the front cover or whatever. And then the back 4 pages were tiny classified ads.
Oh, okay.
Bass guitar required. You know, that was it.
It's the old school Instagram post looking for help. We're at the end, you know?
The internet isn't even, cell phones aren't even, they're not even a dream.
Nothing's yet. It's
Right.
the dial phone, maybe a button one if you
Change for the payphone.
Yeah, payphones,
you know?
yeah.
And so I'm just excited, feeling like I am 24 hours ahead of the rest of the country. And I remember it feeling special. Nobody else knows that this has happened with whatever. And I checked the ads in the back, and I somewhere I still have it. Drummer required for band with rather well-known singer.
They were cryptic with it.
I'm like, oh, that's John. That's the
How'd you know?
Because the Pistols had exploded. I'm just like, this.
So the
feels-
Sex Pistols, and you're talking about Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just. I'm like, oh my God. So I called the number. Hello, Virgin Records. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm like, yeah, hi, this is Martin Atkins. I'm your guy. I'm a really good drummer, and I don't give a fuck. Swearing okay?
Oh, whatever you want. Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. I've been playing since I was 9 and blah, 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 blah. Like, oh yeah, you sound really good. The auditions are Friday. I'm like, oh no, I have to leave. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Can I have an audition this afternoon? They're like, no, auditions are Friday. And we go round and round. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this audition then. And I get my ride back to the north of England. And every sign, it's like a scene in a movie. Every sign I see, the north, 240 miles. The north, 212 miles. I'm like, you fucked up. What are you doing? You're driving away from random opportunity. And so by the time I get home, I called the guys in the band. I'm like, I'm moving to London. I'm going to quit. I'm going to move to London. Sorry. And I didn't say I just missed out on this thing. And they called me the next day and said, yeah, we're going to move too. And we all moved down to London. So then I'm working for the government off of Trafalgar Square. All 4 of us are in an apartment. We had a 3 or 4 night a week cover band residency for some extra money.
Sounds like a great time.
Yeah. I don't know. Drinking a lot, speed.
For being, 18, 19,
Yeah.
it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Not
yeah.
now, but. Yeah.
And I mean, punk's going. I remember the only thing happening that first Christmas, PIL played the Rainbow. They did 2 shows, and it was revolutionary. Nobody played at Christmas. Nothing happened. Everywhere was closed at Christmas. PIL were playing. We didn't go to the show for some reason. I don't know why. But things started to move really quickly, and then there's post-punk and all this other stuff. Wire, Clash, of course, XTC, all of this.
XTC, yeah.
Experimental, like The Cure, wildly experimental first album, very different than what The Cure became. All this stuff is going on. And
amazing music in England at the time.
Yeah. And then the jukeboxes got really interesting because they had the punk, the pop, and then there was some confusion going on, like the Cars.
I was going to say the Cars. I was literally going to say the Cars.
They're presented as punk. Elvis Costello, who is not punk,
No.
Signs to Stiff, presents as a punk.
Yeah.
Narrow Tie. Ooh,
That's like the exact same time, right? Like 79, yeah.
And so people are starting labels. I went to see Gus, Pete and Ivo, who started Mutant 4AD, and they were with Beggar's Banquet. And I played them that single I made with my school friend for Brian Brain. And I think Ivo wanted to sign Brian Brain, and Pete and Gus didn't. And Ivo ended up, it's in his book, he split from them and started 4AD or Mute.
I was going to say this 4AD,
Yeah.
Beggar's Banquet, the Rolling Stones album?
No, it was a label.
Oh,
and
okay.
and
I
a
just
store,
wanted to clarify that.
store in London, yeah.
Okay.
And he says that's the reason he started his own label. I'm like, yeah, this random
That's
shit,
cool. Yeah.
And so the pill thing, the missed opportunity with pill became almost like a sickness with me, Like I'd be reading through Sounds or Melody Maker, pill, fire drummer. Like, oh, so I call, hello, Virgin Records, So by now, they know me at Virgin. It's that guy from the north of England. Yeah, I had a northern accent.
And is Richard Branson there?
he was one of like 8 people there at that time.
Okay.
And they're like, well, you need to talk to Jeanette Lee. She's managing the band. I'm like, she just left. Do you have her home number? I'm like, oh, no, I don't. Well, 875. What? I'm like, oh, my God. Next thing, so I called Jeanette's home number. She hadn't gotten home yet. I end up talking to her mum. Boom, 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 boom. All this stuff is going on. And then, but they've hired somebody else. By the time it's in the papers, they're in the studio doing stuff. And then there's probably 3 or 4 more drummers in a 4 or 5 month period. Richard Dudansky, who I forget what band he was in. Maybe The Fall or Bronski Beat. Or Carl Burns from The Fall. They set fire to him.
What do you mean set fire?
They set fire to him. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I heard. And it was in the, and then somebody else. There's a couple of other drummers as well. Like, I get the impression a couple of people who are like around a studio. When you've got a complex of 3 or 4 studios, there's always people around. And then I think I saw 2 people before they'd fired somebody, and I was up speeding all night, reading these papers, and I'm like, oh my God, I missed this one. So I called Virgin again. They'd gone through 2 more drummers, and I get come on down.
They can't keep a drummer, huh?
Right. And
does that mean anything bad to you when you're looking at that? Or are you too young?
Well,
to realize
surprisingly,
that's a bad sign.
It didn't dawn on me like, well, they just set a drummer on fire.
I was just going to say, all these drummers getting set on fire. Maybe you're too young to realize this might be not the right
Well,
path.
I think I'm thinking, well, it's not me.
Yeah.
And so Keith, I speak to Keith Levine, the guitarist. He's like, yeah, come to the townhouse. And there's some mix-up and bullshit. Anyway, I end up going to the townhouse, which is where Queen did We Will Rock You, Phil Collins did In the Air Tonight. A studio the size of a basketball court. It's one of Virgin's studios. And they're like, yeah, how is that Northerner? So they point to a kit. I sit behind the kit. I put the headphones on. As soon as I put the headphones on, rolling. And we did Bad Baby, Wobble and I, and Keith just jammed it. That was it. That's the take that's on Metal Box. That's it. So I have a co-write on...
First take?
Yeah. Everything we did was first take. Everything.
Any reason? Just...
Because we didn't know what we were doing and we didn't care.
Oh,
okay, this is
very
interesting.
punk rock.
That's it. We didn't overanalyze anything.
By the way, this is why I love recording punk rock bands to this day. Easiest work you could ever ask for. You might have to make sure things don't break or holes or people aren't smoking cigarettes in your basement when you told them not to. Things like that. But as far as the actual work and the pressure they put on you to make it sound, air quotes, good, not any really. A lot of one takes, maybe 2 at most. Nothing compared to the opposite, which would be classically trained musicians could be amazing to listen to. But to get to the point where it's been printed and recorded could take 100 takes because they're such perfectionists. Different mindset,
So I do a conference festival in Decatur and sometimes Chicago called Midwest Music Expo. Mm-hmm. There were 29 bands across 2 stages down in Decatur, 2 weeks, May 3rd. And I'm trying to help some of these musician students be better. Mm-hmm. So, and I love teaching this stuff. I like to ask them a question and get them all to commit and then napalm their answers. So I'm like, you've got 28, 29 bands. How could you differentiate yourself from the other performers? And of course, as expected, it was, well, my classical fingering technique with the mandolin. I want to practice. There's a problem with my nails, but, and then somebody else says, authentically themselves in their power. I'm like, gosh, fuck off, I'm like, and so it's all about the performance and how does the performance compare? Yeah. I'm like, that's not what I was asking. How do you stand out? And I said, with the sound guy who's been there since 7:30 a.m., loading in for an 11 o'clock beginning with a 7 o'clock end, with 15 to 25 minutes, the stress, the band setup. If the band setup is off, you've got to cut one of their songs, and it's like now you're in a fight. You're in a knife fight with the band who's offended, and what they went long, but it's just a stress ball.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if you went up to the sound guy and said, I see what's going on here. We're slated for 20 minutes. You're already 9 minutes behind. We're going to give up our spot, so you'll be 10 minutes ahead, and we're going to Starbucks, a pizza place, and a organic vegetarian Chinese restaurant. Do you want anything? You're going to be on our bill for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Slot of joyful reverence and respect because you get it. And of course they sit there, and some of these students, I'm not slagging on them, I'm trying to help them. They've spent their lives just trying to get better, one aspect of their playing. So I loved that yesterday. I don't know why I started talking about that. Oh, the classically trained.
Yeah. First punk rock playing. Well, we were talking about the recordings you would do, you know.
And there's a story about, there was like a new genre, like swing was a thing, like big band punk swing thing.
Punk swing.
Not punk swing, but like swing with not
Swing
40s.
with an attitude, yeah.
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 And there's all these bands. And the giant in that new genre spent so long recording what was going to be the main pivotal album of the genre that they were such a huge part of.
Yeah.
It was over. It's like, here we go. Nobody cared.
Yeah, it's too late.
It's just, I think they were on the Tonight Show and nobody cared. It was just, so it's clearly more than just your talent. There's the timing, the context, and everything else.
Your attitude,
Yeah.
being kind, being self-aware to like know that you are, and it's great advice, and I vouch for that advice too, putting on a lot of events and dealing with bands going ahead or behind. The people who let the sound come out of you into the world for the people to hear are the sound people, the managers, the talent buyers, the security guards, all these people. So like you could be talented and amazing and beautiful and young. Doesn't matter if they're not letting that stuff come out of a PA system or onto the internet where it gets recorded, and they do that for you.
Right.
So you got to work with them and be nice and be realistic.
Right.
Manage your expectations. But yeah, you do need to stick out too, because a lot of those engineers they see the same bands over and over again. So if one sticks out, they talk about it. Maybe they become friends. They hook them up with another show. Maybe they get to be their engineer on a tour someday. Right. Those things are real.
Or the security guard that you're an asshole to. They're not a security guard. They're moonlighting on the weekend to finance their new whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I learned that lesson. I got into a fist fight with Kevin Lyman.
Kevin Lyman.
He started the Warp Tour.
Oh, Warp Tour. Like Vans Warp Tour.
Yeah.
The Vans. You got in a fist fight with the Vans Warp Tour guy.
But it's his tour. It's Kevin's tour. Vans are involved.
Okay.
And there's a stage called Kevin Says Stage because bands would come. Kevin said we could, so they started a stage. It's just the Kevin Says Stage. But he was at Golden Voice in California, and there was some beers and they weren't cold enough, and I don't know what the hell. Next thing you know, we're rolling around on the ground. We had a fight.
Yeah.
I was an asshole. And you just never know. Fortunately, I got to apologize to Kevin. We were on a panel, new music seminar in New York, 6 people on a touring panel. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Kevin Lyman.
How many years later was it?
15 plus, maybe 20.
Long time.
Yeah. And so it's the first question is, touring, what's it? I'm like, I've got to stop. I can't go any further without standing up in front of 600 people. And I want to apologize to Kevin at the end here. I was a complete asshole backstage at a PIL show. And I wanted to apologize because it was complete. And I think, now we're friends,
Yeah.
But having an opportunity to apologize like that, random and very rare.
Right. But it means a lot, especially in front of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we'll get into those eras because we're still talking about the 80s and your first recording with Pill.
Yeah.
It was printed to tape, to vinyl, to CD. Like it was released.
Well, there weren't CDs then.
Oh, is this what year is this?
This was 79.
79. CDs are what, 81 they came out?
I don't remember CD. I don't remember CDs till later.
I don't know if they were accessible.
Yeah,
It was probably for wealthy folks, like every technology.
Yeah,
you know, people
Yeah,
had
'cause,
8K TVs a while ago, but now they're more affordable. It's the same thing.
I think the shining jewel of John Lydon's amazing hi-fi was beautiful triple walnut tannoy speakers. Was a Nakamichi cassette deck, like cassette. I think the Walkman was slightly revolutionary in the 80s.
Yeah.
I think cassette and Bow Wow Wow C30 C60 C90 Go. I think it was cassettes for a few years.
Okay.
I wonder if CDs were 90.
CDs were definitely early 80s, but it took time. It took time to get up there.
Yeah.
I maybe Thriller, maybe 83, maybe Thriller's one of the first on CDs. Madonna, I know one of those big ones were the first on CD. Maybe 83.
They did it really smartly. Billy Joel,
Yeah.
some classical bullshit. They were definitely hitting all the different markets.
They were just expensive, and computers were not what they were yet. So I think it just took time for it to be affordable for everyday people to have them like around the house and stuff,
So Metal Box was 3 12-inch singles in a metal tin with the PIL logo embossed on the lid. It still is, to this day, New York Times #1 packaged album of all time.
Whoa.
Every
Your
year
first one you did with them?
Yeah.
You had no idea?
No.
Was Johnny there when you did the first recording?
Yeah,
He was
everybody
singing?
was there. Was John sitting there on the couch?
That was the first time you saw him and met him?
Yeah.
What was that like, knowing that he was in this band Sex Pistols
Well,
at that time? What was that like?
I have to...
Remember.
But he was notorious, said fuck on national television. And the Sex Pistols were frightening to a lot of people, and getting stabbed themselves, public reaction to the Pistols, harassed by the police. So it's like, hey, how's it going, dude?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a notorious pop star. And at that time, one of the 10 most recognizable figures in the UK,
Yeah.
So that was crazy.
Yeah.
So I did drums, like, okay. And then I went back to my job.
And they're all older than you, right? You were the youngest?
Not by much.
Okay.
I was the youngest, but only by about 2 years. It felt to me like I was a younger generation.
Yeah.
Because John had the Pistols. Keith had been in the Clash.
Yeah.
But I think I was only 2 years younger than Keith.
So you're 20 years old. Your first time in here recording. You've been trying to get in this band for a couple months, right? But a couple of years.
2 years.
2 years. And then you're in a room with someone from the Pistols and the Clash. And they're kind of frightening, a little bit older. Wow. That's a lot for a 20. You're only 20 at that point.
Yeah, living alone
Not bad.
in London. I would sit on Nelson's column during my lunch break, have a sandwich.
You're still working for the government at this time?
Yeah,
Okay.
for another year or so, another 6 months or so. And back then, London wasn't as touristy. You could squat. New York and London are inaccessible now.
Yeah.
In
Yeah, they are.
that way for comedians and performers and artists.
Expensive.
Yeah. So, four of us were sharing a flat, and there we go. Yeah, yeah.
And probably didn't even have the highest paying jobs to do that.
No, pretty badly paying jobs. So within a couple of months, and at some point I'm going to timeline this out. So I'm at the Townhouse studio. I play on the Metal Box. We go and do the John Peel sessions at the BBC studios in Maida Vale. And John Peel was a legendary hero to all of us kids for the next 2 decades.
Was he a host or a producer?
He had his own radio show every
Okay.
night, and he played everything.
Just cool DJ.
And he was the filter that guided us to all of this. Everything came to him. He played it, take you on an interesting journey.
Yeah.
He helped bands like the Undertones get in the studio. He sent them money and helped them with their first 7-inch. So to be on the John Peel show, which I'd listened to for years as a kid, was insane. And then we did Old Grey Whistle Test, live television in the UK. Within that first 3 months, I was on the front cover of Melody Maker, which is like, I used to walk past...
the one you would always get.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I would walk past the newsagents and it would be out front, you know. I remember, like, yeah, one day, you know.
Yeah, and then one day you were.
And then we went to Paris in January. So within 6 months, we go to Paris, my first time out of the country. We do 2 shows. That's recorded for a live album. And then in April, only 8 months in the band, we fly to America to do the American tour and end up on American Bandstand. And, you know.
What's that like, American Bandstand?
Well, it was just, you start to fall into this, you're all characters in this band. Not to the extent of the Bay City Rollers or the Sex Pistols, but there is a vibe about Pill. Fuck off. We've got this huge lighting rig. Turn all the green lights on. Okay, and then what are we going to do? No, that's it. Bye-bye. No lights, just green. Fuck off. You know, like we had no merchandise, which was stupid, but, you know, John was very contrarian. Warner Brothers take us to see the Plasmatics in Cleveland. It's like, she's going to blow up a car. It's going to be unbelievable. She's got a chainsaw. She's going to blow up a car. We got to leave. No. 2 more songs. She's blowing up a car. Yeah, no, we have to leave now. And John wound up the Warner Brothers people so much. It was kind of delightful.
On purpose? Yeah.
Oh, my God, yeah. To the point where you wonder, any lesser band or any band that sounded like us that didn't have Johnny Rotten fronting it, we would have been fired.
Yeah,
you know?
canned, yeah.
But
what do you, a quick side question.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from in England, the punk of the, you know, say with 1970 or 1973 and beyond, that era from 70 to 80, what created these people? What created the punk? What created the Clash? What created Sex Pistols? In your thoughts, in your opinion, your experience, because you were there.
Well, so part of it is that without sounding lame, it's like, what can we do to piss these old people off?
Just tired of the establishment.
Yeah.
Tired of rinse and repeat.
And it was fairly strict back then, you know, most people's upbringing. So there's a rebellious thing. We were rebelling against everything. The journalists who wielded supreme power over bands, if they made you single of the week, you were it for a week and you could parlay that into a year-long career around the clubs. If they said, and then the journalists became stars for a minute and they would have wars with each other and you'd see a journalist take down a band with some flowing prose, whether that was justified or not. It was just like, oh, we'll go off on this tangent because it works. And so here's the Pistols. Joe Wobble would have a bicycle chain in his pocket. And if they saw a journalist, they'd bicycle chain a journalist. It's like, yeah, okay, let's go. You know, like turning the tables.
Yeah.
And then, so this rebellion, you had, I forget who was on the Sex Pistols TV show with Bill Grundy, but someone's wearing a swastika armband, Nazi uniform, as Prince Andrew did at one point at a party. Like, whoa, just outrageousness for outrageousness' sake.
Yeah.
And then that became, I can't play an instrument, but let's have a go. People just picking up the opposite of a conservatory model. People just picking up instruments and going. And so you've got originality and enthusiasm and energy. And
nothing to lose type of mentality.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, if you don't know the rules, it's, you know, you can work outside of them. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't. But, and then people start record labels. Everybody's starting a label. Like, fuck the establishment. We'll start our own, you know? So all this stuff informs my situation a few years later.
Yeah.
But and it was just galore, like fuck everything.
Yeah.
You know, and it was electrifying to be involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a moment in time you'll never have back because it's the birth of that.
Right.
And there's an interesting thing that happens, and I don't know if it has to do with enough information was finally getting out into the world. Technology is a big factor of it. You couldn't have punk without electric guitars and amps that were strong enough to distort and be louder. 15 years ago, that genre couldn't have existed with the technology that was available. And recording technology got more affordable for people who didn't have money, like punk rockers, to at least do a quarter-inch tape.
Right.
Go back in time, 15 years, it wouldn't sound good either.
Right.
And I think that's also why hip-hop also started around the same time in the early 70s. They have a parallel, hip-hop and punk. Very anti-establishment, very much we've been forgotten about, so we will do our own thing relative to the culture we have right now.
Yeah.
And there's a parallel like connection between, and because they kind of happened around the exact same time, like early 70s. They were both born.
We when we ended up in New York, 82, like New York was a very different place, and that hip hop was happening, and that was our circle, was Futura, Dos Mil, Futura 2000, graffiti artists. Some of the bands are incorporating everything, conch, pig bag. Everybody's experimenting with everything, low-end dub, all this stuff going on. And then the Beastie Boys came from punk into more of a hip-hop thing, and they're in the middle of all of that. When we went to see Spinal Tap,
The movie?
was
it 84?
I maybe...
I think it's 84.
Yeah. The audience was some metal kids, some hip hop kids. It was just the new interesting movie that week.
Yeah.
I remember the audience being wildly diverse, you know. And
Do you think everyone got it though? Do you think people got it?
the metal band in front of us got upset and left. They realized everybody was laughing at
So
them.
the metal band got upset and laughed because Spinal Tap is just mocking them in their face.
But I think a similar thing happened with Wax Trax, Touch and Go, the indie scene, Butthole Surfers, Jesus Lizard, Big
You're talking
Black.
about Chicago's.
Yeah. And Wax Trax, the electronic stuff. For the first few years, that was all intertwined. And the hip hop being recorded at Chicago Trax Recording, everything was in there. And then things got their paths and things became more rigid and structured and people went in different ways. So I've seen that a few times.
Yeah. You really have. You've seen a lot the last 50 years of the music industry and where it's gone. How many sub-genres there are now, you can't even write a list. It's impossible to make a diagram now. It used to be possible in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Not
it was kind of cool. And now it's like...
You can't figure out what is what. We're genreless. We live in a genreless world. There's endless combinations of things happening now, which is really cool, but then you also kind of get lost in it. You're like, I don't know what's going on. There's so much music, which is beautiful, but yeah. So the 80s, you started going to America and started touring more with PIL, Public Image Ltd. And you said you did 4 years with them or 4 albums with them?
No, I think 5 albums.
5 albums.
5 years, 79 to 85.
Okay.
We toured the world, did a live album in Japan, the first live album to be recorded to a 32-track Mitsubishi digital machine.
Whoa.
So if you were to buy a 32-track Mitsubishi, the test tape that comes with it has got me drumming on it.
No way.
Yeah.
That's so cool. What do those go for now?
Oh, God.
I can't even
I don't
imagine.
know.
But I also can't imagine the digital technology being that great on it. Like it's ADD converter.
Yeah,
There's no way it's that good if it's that old.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah. So I quit I quit halfway through 84 and I said to John, look, I'll stick around for 6 months. I'll do the European tour, the American tour, Australia and Japan. Wow. But I'm done.
Why did you want to leave?
He was a complete asshole.
Yeah.
And
just even personally, just off stage?
No, especially personally.
Oh.
And so for a while, it was just me and him as well. We hired some different people. And Yeah. So if you extrapolate, in the first 6 months of my time with Pill, I did everything that you would create a list of the things you would want to do in a successful career. Tour America, front cover of Melody Maker, live television, American Bandstand, Disneyland, blah, 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 blah. This
Europe,
studio, that studio.
Japan,
Yeah.
everywhere.
And so here I am. We have This Is Not a Love Song was top 5 all over the world. We're on Miami Vice, which was the #1 TV show back then. Like we're playing to 10,000 people in LA. Bum, bum, bum.
What was the biggest show you played with them?
Maybe 10,000 people.
Wow, what's that like? What's that feel like?
Crazy. It was
Especially back then, because live sound systems were not what they're like now.
right.
Not even close.
And it was a riot. Police on horseback, police helicopters. I mean, it was a lot. And but there I am with a house with a swimming pool and the palm trees, and
From playing music.
as a kid from the north of England, that's it.
That's the dream.
Here we are.
You made it.
And I was so miserable and sick. I'm like, well, it took me about a year to realize, no, this isn't good.
That's insightful for being 25, being successful on just being a musician, which, as you know, is like winning the lottery 3 times. To have a life like that, and make real good money off it, to buy a home in LA. Not easy to give up or look past the money and the fame and the people and the friends and the women and everything that comes with it. Right. So yeah, it was that hard on you that you were like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, it was just toxic. And I think the move to LA was really bad. When we lived in New York, we lived on 19th Street and 11th Avenue. And John didn't drive, neither did I. And my friends would come over. And I remember Margot, my friend Margot. John's like, oh, we're out of beer. And Margot said, well, get some fucking beers, you lazy fuck. And I thought, uh-oh. And John was like, yeah, okay. He went and got a case of beer and came back. Once we got to LA, he didn't drive. I learned to drive immediately.
You got to in LA. It's not like New York.
But it made John just on the phone with the management company all the time. We're out of milk. So
petty stuff.
And it was necessary for him, but he became that person. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. So, and John was very charismatic and could be charming and make someone's year or cut somebody to the bone with criticism and destroy them. Mm-hmm. And there was too much destruction going on. And I'm like, I don't want to be around this. This turns out all of my dreams are not a dream. It's more of a nightmare. And and I quit without thinking about it. I think I thought, I'll quit and I'll join another huge band. Like, why wouldn't I think that, And things didn't go to plan. I end up still doing Brian Brain here and there, but I end up working construction.
In Los Angeles?
In New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Moved to New Jersey and planted trees for Tico Torres, Bon Jovi's drummer, for a week, really humbling. And Tico had been to see PIL at Roseland, and that was to have a conversation with him about that show and drumming, and then go back to digging holes for his trees.
That is heavy.
Yeah. And
you were how long after Pill was this?
8 months.
So 8 months ago, you're in this big rock band, touring the world, making good money, hearing your music on the radio. I mean, just everything on TV. Yeah. And then you're planting trees for another famous drummer from a different band across the country. Who knows who you are?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it doesn't get much of a bigger kick in the nuts.
It took me 20 years to tell that story. It's so humbling. So
I can imagine.
And then working construction, I'm working with a French guy and an American guy. We started a company called Picnic on the Grass. They were both chefs So once we upended the whole idea of a construction company. We had a pirate flag. Sometimes we'd start the day with a barbecue, and you'd see the family like leaving, going, "I want that life," We're like, we're flying kites, and like, and we get the work done. And then while I was doing that, I got the call from Geordie to go to England and join Killing Joke.
Wow. And what year was that?
87, 88.
87, 88. Okay.
Yeah.
And you just like, all right, going back to England?
Yeah, I was married. I was married to my first wife at the time. It was complicated because we were married and I'd filed for my green card, legal permanent residence.
Mm-hmm.
But while you're waiting for your FBI check and your Scotland Yard check, you're not supposed to leave the country except for a family emergency or a job opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, okay, job opportunity. They're like, no. Which is like, they knew more than I did that Killing Joke was not a job opportunity. And Killing Joke was in massive disarray. 2 members had quit. I didn't know what I was walking into, but I did. And
so did you have to wait then to go?
no, I just went. I went.
Oh.
So, and I mention that for anybody that's listening, if you don't think that you need to jump off a cliff backwards for opportunity, you're wrong. So get ready.
Get ready
For that.
to defy the federal government if you have to.
Well,
is what
no,
you do.
No,
Just
no,
kidding.
no. But the reality was, I mean, I packed 2 suitcases and moved to New York City, which as a 21-year-old, 21. And when I went to, it wasn't ever presented as an audition. Like, we want you. Oh my God, we want you to come and join our band. But if it hadn't gone well, I wouldn't have been in the band. So It was kind of an audition, but it was never presented as such. But if it had gone badly, I could have been stuck in England for 8 months to a year waiting for my paperwork.
They wouldn't let you go back. Yeah.
Right. And so Killing Joke was interesting, eye-opening, tribal, different viewpoints centered around numerology, ley lines, Aleister Crowley, fucking other stuff in a very intelligent way. Instead of just hell for leather, let's go crazy and the audience will go crazy. Like, no. Pull it back a little bit. And Jazz and Geordie, the singer and guitarist, would be like just laughing uncontrollably. Did you see what happened when we pulled it back? That's when the mosh pit got really violent, when the song got a bit slower. They were always messing around with stuff.
Did that name come from the Batman Joker graphic novel?
I honestly don't know.
Do you know what I'm talking about, though?
Yeah, I know. It's also a Monty Python sketch, The Joke That Kills.
Oh, okay.
And they had World War II. They'd tell a joke and it would kill the opposing troops. So they had a ministry for jokes, and maybe it came from, I don't know.
Okay, I was just wondering.
But certainly that sense of humor. One of the early T-shirts was the Pope with Hitler and the Pope's, so questioning all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But also so many amazing songs. Maybe 20. Like half of their songs were hit singles in Europe. Change, War Dance, The Wait, Kings and Queens, Nighttime, Love Like Blood, 80s. I mean, anthemic, And so I slightly started managing Killing Joke because it was a disaster. And it becomes my mission to get them over to the States. Because gigs in the UK and Europe were all right, but there was more money in the US, and I felt an untapped market. And so I got them eventually to tour the US. I think my label was going. We started managing them. We released a spoken word album. And whilst on tour with Killing Joke, they introduced me to their friend Al Jorgensen at the Chicago show. So I met Al. Al asked me to go and play drums with Ministry.
So while you're on tour in Chicago, you meet Al.
With Killing Joke. And
Yeah.
I'm still a member of Killing Joke.
Okay.
while I toured with Ministry in 1990.
Do you remember what show it was? What venue you were at in Chicago?
Probably the Riviera.
Riviera.
It was the Riviera.
That's awesome. Great venue.
Definitely the Riviera. And then the venue ripped us off. So I'm like, look, it's okay, this is Killing Joke, and no, people don't rip off Killing Joke. So, we've got to drive to Milwaukee tomorrow, but I'm coming back, and we'll get our money. And we did. I came back at the end of '89, ended up hanging out with Al. I was in the studio with Ministry again, and found this crazy apartment by the lake up near Evanston, and sowed the seeds for the Chicago move, got more involved in what was going on with industrial, saw everything that I saw in London that precipitated punk, and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I'm moving to Chicago.
You saw something different, unique happening here?
Yeah, I met Albini.
88 this is?
88.
88.
Maybe 89. But Jesus Lizard did their first show at Albini's birthday party.
Love Jesus Lizard, by the way.
Yeah.
Great
Met
band.
Corey from Touch and Go.
and Go.
At the same time hanging out with Al and Paul Barker and Chris Connolly. So in
Wax
between
Trax.
both the Wax Trax camp,
Yeah.
the Touch and Go camp, the Albini camp. And then it was during that Ministry tour in 1990 that myself and Bill Rieflin, the other drummer, there was two of us, we started Pigface. And the day the tour ended, we were in the studio with Pigface.
So you come in, you do a tour with Killing Joke, you're in America, you're in Chicago, you see something going on. Ministry, you join Ministry while you're here for tour? You join them?
Yeah, I moved over here.
Moved over, okay.
I went over there to audition with Killing Joke, and then I'm like, we got to
Chicago.
get over. Yeah.
Okay, so you brought Killing Joke to Chicago.
Yeah.
From England.
To the States.
To the States.
Yeah.
And then, so you're in Chicago, late 80s, and in Killing Joke and Ministry. And how long are you with those bands for?
I was in Ministry I wasn't a member of Ministry. I worked with Ministry for maybe 16, 18 weeks.
Okay.
We did the Cage tour. In case you didn't feel like showing up, as a live album and a live video from that tour. It's one of the craziest tours I've
That's the one you
ever
explained
been.
when you had the cages in front of you.
Yeah.
And people were climbing them and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really interesting performance art kind of.
Well, and not intentional.
Not intentional.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody except Country and Western, they did that in Country and Western bars to stop
The bottles.
The bottles.
Like in Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
The chicken
and
wire.
I think Al just thought it was funny. But then when you've got 90 people clinging on each other's shoulders, clinging to this, it was almost like instead of being an additional barrier, that moats weren't common then, much more common now with the barrier. So it was almost like it created like a no man's land on the other side of the fence, 2 feet of the stage.
Yeah, anything can go on because the
that,
fence
people were
stops
like,
them.
well, we're not on the band's area.
Yeah.
And so people would you'd have 90 people wandering around
On the fence?
on the fence on each other. It was
How do people know the fence was going to hold up all this weight?
It's a fucking miracle.
That sounds very dangerous.
I've got pieces of it.
Like
at
the fence could
museum.
have fell onto you or them.
Oh,
Like
it
whoever-
did. It did at times.
Oh, my God.
And so you've got all these people on a fence, and it's inch by inch metal
Yeah.
tubing
Yeah.
that they'd have like a C clamp holding. Like not enough.
So it's just like a normal chain link fence kind of thing?
Yeah. With this, and sometimes a big piece of it will be going around the mosh pit,
Oh, my God.
and it's like
That would never happen now.
no.
No. Oh, no.
And and I'd experienced some wild shit on stage with PIL and Killing Joke. And but that Ministry tour was something else.
That was the craziest thing you've ever experienced on?
It was also some of the beats were difficult, immediately difficult. And so it was a process to get to be able to do those songs. Once you start playing those songs every night, we were slightly indestructible.
Yeah. 2 drummers, you said?
Yeah.
That's really hard to do for those listening to drummers, especially if you're like miking every single thing. The kick drum is the hardest part because if the kick drum isn't lining up right, it sounds horrible.
Right. You got cancellation and
Yeah, it's bad. And snare is important too, but the kick is because of the low frequencies. It's especially out of a PA system and oh my god, if you don't get that right, horrible low end muddiness, nonsensical low frequencies booming everywhere.
right. But Lee Poper was doing sound, and he'd done, I don't know what else. He did Killing Joke. He was in a band called the Slamming Watusies here in town, and it was frighteningly loud. And I think he did a really good job.
No hearing protection back then.
No.
Nobody cared.
No.
Very naive back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your touring ministry, you were just kind of like a touring drummer with them then? Mm-hmm. And then Killing Joke. This is the early 90s now. You're still in Chicago. What is the scene like here? Because I'm born in 89, so I have no recollection of this. And people in my family, even though I've been in this area my whole life, no one in my family was in that world or scene. So I never even heard about this stuff from them. So it's only like lore if you've been in the Chicago scene for as long as I have that you know about some of these things, some of the names, but you don't actually know what happened and what it was like. And I've gotten a little bit of insight because I had a chance to talk to Steve Albini before he passed away, and he gave me some insight, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't as in-depth of a conversation like this. So just be interesting for the listeners because there's a lot of musicians and artists in Chicago. If you want to just talk about what it was like, because we've been growing from that scene ever since. Like where we are now is from that scene, I think, personally.
Yeah. Well, I think, first off, there's all kinds of things, but there's a Chicago, or it might be a Midwest mindset. Mm-hmm. So I lived in New York City, I lived in Los Angeles, and I come to Chicago, and it's like, I had an 8,500 square foot loft behind where Reggie's is now. And I'm going to build a floating rehearsal space. And it's actually a little bit bigger than this room. It was a huge undertaking,
big, yeah.
Floating on rubber tubing filled with sand. And I don't know what would have happened in LA or New York, but Chicago, my upstairs neighbors are like, yeah, okay, well, let us know when the wood arrives, ha, ha, ha. Well, when the wood arrives, there they are, sleeves rolled up and a pot of coffee. Let's go.
That's so Chicago.
And then next thing you know, here's Steve Silver. I've got pictures of me and Steve Silver screwing the flooring, the 2x4s, and filling that with sand. And then, I couldn't have built that room, which ended up being Killing Joke, Swans, Lard, Murder Inc. Everybody rehearsed in there. Yeah. Wow. And but it was just this roll up your sleeves and help. So there's that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then, so there's this other thing going on where Corey and Albini, there's big barbecues and bottle rocket fights and craziness. And here's Jesus Lizard and Slint playing at Albini's birthday party. By this point, we've got this rooftop apartment, which sounds exotic, was not, at Granville and Winthrop. This is before we got the loft. And I'm like, well, I think I have most of a PA at my place in a drum kit. You could play on my roof tomorrow. And it's like, yeah. So Jesus Lizard's second show was on my roof, and
That's awesome.
And David Yao was hanging off the 16th floor by his fingernails, but lunatic. And Chris Conley's there, and he said, excuse me, Martin, who's the fucking Steve Albini wannabe mixing sound in the hat? I'm like, Chris, it's Steve Albini. Just like that. And I'm sure parties going on over at Wax Tracks. But then you had Exit Club, chain yourself to the bar, drink for free. We had like a whole video there. They would have premieres of videos at Exit. It moved location to North Avenue, but when it was on Wells Street, it was dangerous. Crash Palace, Smart Bar, The Metro, Lounge Acts, Medusas, La Mer Vipère, very short-run club that burned to the ground, Club COD, Club Neo, which went for 30 years. Mm-hmm. All a product of kind of this punk idea. Suzanne Shelton started Neo when the bathrooms at O'Banion's didn't work for 6 months straight. She's like, fuck this, I'm starting a club. And it became, Bowie went there. It became this this hub for all of us misfit toys, you know.
I think, not to cut you off, but I think O'Banion's is named after the famous Irish Dina O'Banion who ran the north side of Chicago.
Oh, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was the punk place, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And then it was somewhere else. And then you had the Alley, 99th floor, clothing places. And the Alley was like on the forefront of, it was the predecessor to Hot Topic. They took everything for, you know, but then you've got the Alley, which is clothing that says fuck. And then they have Architectural Revolution next door, which is gargoyles and all the other essential stuff you need. And then Guitar Centers down the street. The Dunkin' Donuts at the end of that cluster becomes known as Punkin' Donuts. You know, Chicago Tracks Recording is a few blocks away on Halsted. Excuse me. And they were doing hip hop and industrial. That's why I'm interested that Michael Kolar, Industrial Made Everything Better. He was an industrial fan and turned all that stuff into his hip hop work, you know. So Chicago Tracks is the home to Thrill Kill Cult, Ministry, Revolting Cox, KMFDM, De Warsaw, Skinny Puppy. Everybody's recording that, along with all the hip hop and house stuff that's going on. And Reed Hyams, who ran Chicago Tracks, gave us a deal in 1990, record now, pay later. I've got that contract is at the museum.
I remember seeing it, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, we couldn't have had Pigface without that. My label wouldn't exist without that. So, and then you've got H-Gun Video. It's been going for a few years, and they do Head Like a Hole, 1990, 91, Frontline Assembly, Meat Beat Manifesto, Ministry, Anthrax versus Public Enemy. Next thing you know, they're doing commercials for MTV, bum, bum, bum. Huge, groundbreaking, pioneering videographers and editors. So it wasn't one thing, it was 25 things.
Yeah, a bunch of things, yeah.
All of these things that came together. And it just became really powerful. Everything's feeding everything else.
Yeah.
You know, and then Empty Bottle comes out of that. The Hideout, all of this next level stuff starts to bubble. Albini's studio grows, Touch and Go grows. Touch and Go start manufacturing my label, Invisible. The sales from Pigface allow me to do whatever the fuck I want to do with it, sign other bands. So we have this, so there's Wax Tracks, Invisible, Touch and Go, Project Records, Smash, a division of Island, was in Chicago. All of this stuff is gone. And then to add to that, the record stores, Reckless, my God. Reckless kind of overshadowed, but there's a ton of record stores. Robbie over at Reggie's had a store in the suburbs, and then combined that when Reggie started. All of this stuff is going on that's what created this scene, which is it. And it's not me going, and then I got my first jacket at this place, although I do have those stories, but it's more to do with what then are the ingredients to set another one of these bombs off again. You know, opportunity recognition, pouring gasoline on the sparks. What are the things we could do?
I'm trying. I'm really trying.
Right. And I look at Decatur. It's the fastest shrinking city in America, and I don't want to say rock and roll could save. Well, I think music could save specifically one block of Decatur, which I think would influence the block next to it. And it's, you don't save a city by saving a city. You do it one block at a time.
Yeah.
And that gets very interesting to me. So I don't want to have a conversation with somebody like, there are problems in the city, but if you listen to the chorus of my song, I think it will make your heart happy. But I do want to have a conversation with someone like, yeah, this block was decrepit and unrentable 4 years ago, and this is what we did with this venue, and this is what we did across the street. And we planted the seed of guitar lessons on one side of the street, and there's a record store and a coffee shop on the other side. So while mum and dad are taking whoever for guitar lessons, sitting in the car, they're actually buying a cup of coffee and buying an album or whatever the fuck they're doing. And like,
Sounds like hope. Just gives people hope. You get to do things you enjoy. It's hope.
and so there are groups of people at much higher levels. Like I met with the Icelandic government and city governors about some of this stuff, and there are templates for this stuff, So and you could see it in punk mindset, the optimism of post-war World War II is starting to fade. Miners' strikes, IRA, bombings from the Irish Republican Army. It's chaos, and this stuff emerged from that. And you could see it. So those conversations will be very interesting to me. Unfortunately, we're here in Bridgeport, which is exploding itself with opportunities for community. There's a music collective on Morgan or something. I just saw on it. I don't even know what it is.
I've been there. I've done. I think I did a podcast there once.
What is it?
I forget. It's like a public place where I think you pay maybe like dues or something, and you can use it to do podcasts, recording, conversations, art, galleries.
Isn't that the co-prosperity sphere?
I don't know. I'd have to go see it.
Because that's a co-prosperity. But there's this music.
Maybe there's another thing. Yeah. Maybe it's new. There's a lot. Morgan is just every month there's like a new thing.
Isn't it wild?
Yeah, and Halstead both.
But there's a lesson kind of like I would have bet money on Halstead. It's like it's the main thing. Morgan's the little Wicker Parky thing going on.
Yeah.
Like holy shit.
It's nice to see.
There was more gang stuff over on Morgan.
Yeah.
So you'd think, oh, but there it goes.
Yeah.
And so, as much as I might want to fish around for a larger location for the museum, I'm loving the neighborhood.
I love it. And your museum's great. I like the size of it.
Thank you.
The things you have in there are remarkable. For those listening, you want to just tell everyone about the museum real quick before we keep going on?
Well, I started. After the pandemic, planted some seeds of how some of the things that I know about strike a chord with people. And so a series of Zoom presentations planted the seed for me to think like, what if this was a physical thing? I started the museum 4 years ago in April, and it will not stop growing.
That's great.
Stuff just keeps arriving that's mind-boggling. The caliber, the intensity, the joy of the guests. Just last weekend from Buffalo, Denver, Seattle, England, where I used to live near Durham, drinking Newcastle Brown. This guy, and we think in these. You might think in traditional terms of like. How many people, what was the cost of the ticket, how does the gift shop do? And of course, we track all of that. But last week was these people from a law firm in Denver, London, Chicago, New York, and somewhere else. And we're just having conversations. It's a 3-hour thing. And this one was like, yeah, I'm in consumer protection with legal. I'm like, oh, that's great, good for you. She's like, well, she wasn't on the consumer side. She's on the big business side. And so she sent me an email the next day. Her firm has to do a certain amount of pro bono work to offset all the fucking over the little guy stuff. And they'd like to represent the museum.
Wow.
And so we're in the process of starting up the LLC and the 501c3 so they can represent the 501c3.
That's amazing. Good for you.
And so all of this stuff, it's a joyful networking on crack. Senior VP of a record label wants to stop by this week. As I said, Icelandic government, all kinds of people I wouldn't be hanging out with.
Yeah.
We're sharing these moments.
But it seems like you've had those stories your whole life.
Well, yeah, but most surprisingly now through this.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect it through that kind of vessel, that pathway.
And so we spent 4 years in the same way that you might tweak your live show. Like, let's put that song at the end. Let's do a light change. You know, let's add some 8mm film loop projectors to do. We've been doing that since the beginning of the museum. We've enhanced the gift shop. So it's become a revenue stream, but now it's an inventory control nightmare. We've doubled the size of the studio downstairs. We've increased the size and quality of the speakers. We just added a subwoofer to the situation down there. We're talking
soon Aaron's speakers. Yeah. You'll be getting Aaron's custom speakers.
I need to think about whether I think they will be magnificent on the main floor and handle that really well. So we could create an upstairs listening experience amongst everything, but also have the downstairs studio experience. Not really sure. We'll tweak that.
I told Aaron he should come up here. He's never been here. So I said sometime this summer, because he's off teaching, come up here, hang out here, then we'll go over your place. He can see it. So he can, because he'll need, if he knows the physics and the math of it, he could give better advice and customize it to that space.
Yeah.
And kind of give you some heads up on like best placement, because they're dipole speakers. You don't want them against the wall.
Right.
So there's like certain things.
There's
and he'll tell you, and you'll get it.
There's a place in the upstairs room that I think they would be immense.
Yeah.
And what we've seen downstairs is, you know, with a pair of OK speakers, you play somebody something that they're familiar with an album, but they're not familiar with a different version of a song. And it can become a physical, emotional experience. That's why we enhanced the system, put some Christmas tree lights up, worked on that thing, that part of the Six Flags Magic Mountain experience.
Yeah.
You know, how can we make this more emotional, whatever.
Yeah, it was amazing listening to music down there.
Thank you.
It was really cool, especially what we were listening to. Kind of blew my mind a little bit, because that's not available anywhere.
Right.
You're
and there's more
you're
and
one
more.
of the only one who has that tape, those demos, 9 Inch Nails demos.
Yeah, but there's so much more. I have so much unreleased PIL. Wow. Like some of my work mixes when I worked with Skinny Puppy on the Process album. Of course, Pigface, Genesis, P-Orage, so much stuff from all the multi-tracks that I control the IP on a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So I let people come in and mix themselves singing along with Trent singing Suck with Pigface.
Oh my God.
And people come in and play keyboards. It's like,
that's amazing.
That's a insane punk thing. And then people can leave with a cassette. So that's punk.
Oh
that's
my God. That's cool.
Like, that's your mix.
That's
it's
really
your shitty mix.
Yeah.
Play it to anybody you want. You know? And trying to have the flavor and the guiding principles, whatever they are, of post-punk, punk, and industrial, and apply that to the museum. And you know, and trying to not be precious about it, which makes it more precious. So Mother's Day, one of my friends who wrote a piece for the catalog about the first 2 locations of Wax Trax, the store, and their mum would drive them to the store as a 14-year-old, you know. Laurie asked me if she could show her mum the museum on Mother's Day. So we opened up, and it was really, you know, special for all. It wasn't like somebody from a famous band was there. So somebody's mom was there, and all of these moments. So we're not even started on where it's going in terms of the connections.
I could see it getting too big for that space and having to go somewhere else.
It is. Like, I mean, there's so much there.
There's a lot. There's things on top of things on top of things, layers. I mean, that's how my old basement used to be, because it was my whole life I was there. So it was just 30 years of me putting things on top of each other. This is much more organized and clean. So I do know what that feels like, but yours is like every inch of every single thing has something on it, and every part of the museum is part of the museum. It's, you know, it's just like layers upon layers. You could look at any square inch and see a new thing every time you go there. It's so much stuff.
And I love giving tours, but coming next is QR codes for stories so people can wander around when I'm not there.
That's smart.
We're increasing the size of the basement area. We're moving the mail order stuff into the very back, which will make, but that space will be full in a heartbeat.
Yes.
You know.
So is most of it, is it more things people send you, or is it stuff you have? It's a combination of
It's
things
a combination
you own?
of both. And the problem is, somebody sends me something, and it's the big shiny object. Excuse me. And I love the stuff when it's not immediately connected to me, because it's not the museum of me. But then that makes me do a really bad job of just going through my boxes. I put my hand in a box, and it said Masters. And I thought, master tapes, they should be in the tape library. Well, it's master 8x10 photographs, which is how we used to do promotion. Everybody got a glossy 8x10 photograph with a press kit. And the first thing I pull out is a series of photographs of Genesis P. Orridge, who passed a few years ago now. The pictures we didn't use there was obviously 20 pictures, and we chose one to mass produce for the press kit. Well, here are the other ones taken by their daughter. I'm like, oh God, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then I pull out of a file the agreement between myself, Bill Rieflin, who was drummer in Ministry, King Crimson, and REM.
Wow.
We started Pigface together, and here's the agreement between me and him and Reed to work at Chicago Tracks, which underlines that idea of the 20 things that made Chicago happen. And so I need to put aside some time to go through 4 more of my boxes. You know, I just found all of these receipts from 1991. It's people signing for their wages on the first Pigface tour. Well, that's Olga, Mary Biker, Andrew Weiss from Rollins and Ween. It's like all these, it's all original signatures. Like, oh, holy crap. I don't know if I want to, it's fun to have 10 in a frame. I don't need to put 150 in a frame.
Yeah.
But they need to be catalogued. We could sell duplicates and help fund the museum in that way. It's a freaking nightmare.
It's a pain.
Yeah.
Organizing, cataloging,
Yeah.
file management. It's not fun. It's like the worst part of that kind of job, of any job of production. And for those listening, because I don't think we said the full name, it's the Museum of Post-Punk and Industrial Music in Bridgeport, Chicago.
Yeah.
And what days are you open there for people if they want to go?
We're open all summer.
Awesome.
There's always tours Saturday, Sunday, usually 2 o'clock. And then when the 2 o'clock gets full, we might add a 5 and an 11.
Okay.
And we just watch tickets. And at some point, the next step is just to be open, you know. And I think that would massively increase the foot traffic, obviously. But that we can't be staffed the whole time.
Yeah.
And I like giving the tours, but I also
You're almost like the only one who can do it because you know
well,
so much about everything.
But until we are QR coded, and then people can wander around
Freely.
and hear me or Jason Pettigrew or Chris Connolly or Reed from Chicago Tracks telling a story about something.
Yeah.
You know, so it's past proof of concept phase, ready for something else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain that more in detail. I want to go back though
Okay.
to the 90s.
Oh, God.
I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah. Okay.
You're when did you start Pigface? Was that 90?
1990.
1990. So Pigface, was your idea with Pigface originally to have all these members? How did that start happening? Because you said 750 members, give or take.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
So the basis of the idea is, I always try and think, what can we do with what we have? Like, how am I using everything? So now Pigface scenery is 22 feet high, all the way left to right on a huge stage like Thalia Hall, right? So we're using everything to its fullest. And with Pigface, it's like, look, on the Ministry tour, so it was PIL, Killing Joke, Ministry. I could do something that could be risky and fail. And what is it? The end of my career? I don't know if I care. So let's use that. So we start to experiment on stage. We start to involve ourselves with different people, and there are no rules. And our set list, we didn't rehearse for the first tour, which was a bad idea. We were much better at the end, even at being improvisational, than we were at the beginning. I think we spent a week just dealing with just getting everything to work. But people liked it. So then you start to experiment with belly dancers, 4 people playing bagpipes, a guy with guitar picks welded into a shopping cart, just people wandering on stage, 6 drummers, 3 bass players,
How do you mic all this stuff?
Well, with 6 drummers, you mic 2 kits, you'd stereo mic 2 others, and you might have one mic over the top. It's more of the last 3 kits are more visual.
Sure.
Yeah. But then that also creates a problem with your crew, because you have to have an agreement between everybody that this is what this is.
Yeah.
Because here's your crew guy, micing up the kit. Here we go, 1 more kit to go. No, there's 5 more kits. Woo! Can you help with this thing? I found a mirror ball in the garbage. Could you fix this motor and mount it above there with a light? And I found an inflatable raft. Could you blow up this raft? So we took rides on the audience before that became part of
Flaming Lips.
Rave culture.
Flaming Lips are popular for doing that.
When did they do that?
I don't know, but I know that Wayne Coyne's popular for going in that clear ball.
Well, he does the clear ball. That's the genius level. We were just on an inflatable boat.
Much safer. The clear
taking
ball
rides,
is safer,
Yeah.
Hard to fall out of a clear ball.
Clear ball is just genius.
Yeah. That's cool. So you're doing this in the early 90s, still in Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Ministry, not ministry anymore, just
ministry for that 16 weeks. Yeah.
Right. So Killing Joke, Pigface, the 90s. And how long were you in Killing Joke from that moment on?
Maybe a year after Pigface.
Yeah, okay.
Because Killing Joke was difficult. It's a difficult band to be in. Personalities.
Just too many big personalities.
No respect for the audience, particularly, which I didn't like.
What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example, like what that means?
Fuck them. It's Tuesday night. No encore. And I'm like, we got to do an 8-song encore. It's raining. What are you going to do? Go back to the hotel?
Yeah.
Come on.
They're the ones paying you to have this fun. You kind of owe them.
I would lose my voice. It's exhausting to go up against powerful, charismatic individuals. Come on, we got to do this. And then, so and I might have stayed with Killing Joke a lot longer, but then to have Pigface, where you've got Ogre Chris Connolly, Paul Raven from Killing Joke, Enigma from the X-Files and Jim Rose Circus Freak Show. His whole body's blue, covered in jigsaw pieces. Like all these people wandering in and out and being really nice to each other. And we play at the Metro. We do an all-ages show, which would be 2.5 hours long in early afternoon, and then a 4.5-hour Pigface show after that.
Whoa.
People are wandering on stage. Jimmy Chamberlain's wandering on stage playing drums.
How did he get into that band?
I don't know.
You don't know how Jimmy Chamberlain
Chicago.
of Tool got into your own band?
Chicago.
Just Chicago. That's the answer. That's
Smashing
Chicago.
Pumpkins. So
okay.
So,
Jimmy Chamberlain. That's what I meant. Danny Carey is a
Danny
Tool.
Carey came
but
out.
he's also in your band, right?
Yeah, he came out with this.
I got him confused.
94.
Jimmy Chamberlain, Smashing Pumpkins,
Danny Carey too.
Okay, got it.
Flea came and did a song with
Flea,
us.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
He'd auditioned for PIL in '83, and we stayed friends.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
because Red Hot Chili Peppers were just starting back then.
And,
wow, imagine how different the world would be if he went into PIL and not.
And God bless him,
and
he
not
wouldn't.
Red Hot Chili Peppers.
He wouldn't. I mean, he got the job. I mean, he was Flea. I'm like, yeah, that's it. And he's like, oh no, I don't want to join PIL. I wanted to jam with you, Martin. And I'm like, I was flattered, and I'm like, you fucking asshole! Like, what are we supposed to do now? And of course, there's like 30 bass players, like, thank God, standing in line, waiting for their audition.
So he just wanted to jam with you. He actually didn't want to be.
He didn't want to be.
That's so funny.
And,
What a funny story, Flea.
and so we were about to go to Japan, and Larry, who was managing us at the time, Larry White, said, we don't have to, let's not do this now. Let's meet later tonight or tomorrow. We'll meet at this restaurant. I'll give you a call. So we go to a Japanese restaurant, which was unusual in '83, you know. And it was no holds barred, top of the, you know, like, whoa. And it was like, wow, just imagine, Flea, 3 weeks' time, this could be us in Tokyo, you know. And he's like, no, I've got this band, and no.
Wow,
And
he said no to that. That's
Yeah,
wild.
and then I thought I was smart. I'm like, here's my advice. Just come to Japan. I think we were doing Australia. No, it was just Japan. Just come to Japan. Be really cool. Be good on your resume. And then come back with a bit of money and do your thing. And of course, I'm thinking, once you're on stage in front of 10,000 people with Riot Police and Johnny Rotten,
You're not going to want to leave it.
Right?
Yeah. You're trying to like...
it was 2 years before I
like
decided
a
to leave
reverse
it.
psychology.
Yeah. And he's like, no, he knew the danger that presented. And he wouldn't do it. You know, God bless him. And
He didn't enjoy Johnny Rotten either? He didn't like that vibe?
No, I think he enjoyed it. I mean, John was John. You know,
Sure.
you spend a day or two, it's like, there's fucking Johnny Rotten.
Yeah.
He had yet to become publicly obnoxious. He had his moments, but there was a documentary on punk, and Henry Rollins, Iggy Pop, I think, was involved in it. And there was an interview with Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, who I just met last year.
Oh, wow.
Henry Rollins, Marky Ramone, a couple other people.
How come you weren't in it?
Right.
That doesn't even make... Everyone you just named are your contemporaries that you probably played with.
Yeah,
and know.
well, some of them. And John was drunk and basically saying he started punk, which he obviously didn't.
No.
And slagging on Marky Ramone. It was a look at some of the stuff that I'd had to endure for a couple of years before I left.
Yeah.
And it was really horrible to see it.
Hard to watch that.
Yeah.
That's sad.
And disappointing that management would have allowed that. Like, it's like, look, if John wants to drink, fair enough. But keep an eye on him before this documentary.
Yeah.
That, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. So, yeah.
Sounds like everyone made the right decision.
Yeah.
Because you've hopped around all these different bands, and you're in Pigface now we're back to the early 90s. Jimmy Chamberlain, you said, was coming in. How did Danny Carey get into that situation? Because they're in LA with Tool.
Right. So I think 92, 93, they made an album. I mentioned Lee Poper before, Ministry sound guy, with the two drum kits. Well, Lee, off the back of a bunch of that, Lee ended up producing, I think, one of the first Tool albums.
Undertow.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I remember hanging out, giving Danny some of my crazy drumsticks.
Yeah.
And just hanging out. And then next thing you know, 94, Danny came out for 10 days with us. It's before Tool were really Tool.
popping off, yeah.
Yeah.
Before Anemia or 1996 album.
Yeah. So, and we had three drummers. Joe Trump, who played with Elliot Sharp's Carbon. He also played in Brian Brain back in the day for a bit, when we changed from drums on tape to drums, percussion, and a horn section. And just random people would come out. Casper Brotzmann came and toured with us, German guitarist, all kinds of people from different...
All kinds of walks of life, different practices, different disciplines as musicians.
Yeah.
So we kind of missed over those few years. I know that you had you were with Nine Inch Nails. How did that come about while you were in Pigface at that time?
I wasn't a member of Nine Inch Nails, but I was friends with Trent as he was starting all of that. I have very early demos from that time, which he gave me when he played saxophone in Brian Brain in Cleveland.
How did you meet him for being in Brian Brain if he's over in Cleveland?
I called my friends because Brian Brain had a single with horns on it, and we couldn't afford to travel with a horn section. But I could call everybody up whose floors we'd slept on and say, hey, you know any horn players? And Tom's like, well, I play trumpet and my friend plays saxophone. And his friend was Trent. So they were our horn section. We had a day off the next day. There was a party for the woman, Michelle, who booked the Fantasy Club in Cleveland. And in the laundry room at that party, Trent gave me his demo.
This is 85?
86?
86?
86, I think. I've got to double check because Nine Inch Nails fans go crazy, even at the idea that it could be as late as 88. But I think it was because Trent says he was working on some songs, and there we go. He was working on the songs for a bit before that.
I believe that. You don't just magically have songs out of nowhere, especially back then with all the analog technology.
Yeah.
You can't just keep putting ideas on your cell phone.
Right.
It took a lot more time to physically put down that stuff, and physically mix it, and physically, yeah. I could totally see people have, especially back then, people had demos for years before things came out.
So
that's pretty cool, though.
He gave me a cassette. I connected him with his attorney and an agent. Then he came to Chicago and sang Suck with Pigface before Nine Inch Nails were anything.
Wow.
That's why he was allowed to do it. Within a year, 18 months after that, he wasn't allowed to do anything.
Because it was Nine Inch Nails.
Because it was becoming something, and the label were more and more protective.
Uh-huh.
When he sang with Pigface, it was kind of like a cool thing for him to add to his shit, you know. And and then I did they stayed at our loft when they did the Head Like a Hole video at Exit. So Trent asked me to be in that, which I was. And then he sang Suck, and then I played drums on Wish and something else on the Broken EP.
Broken EP.
And then Nine Inch Nails covered the Pigface song on the Broken EP.
Okay, so it's just intertwining, interconnected.
Yeah.
So really close friends to where you're not in the band, you just played on the song.
Yeah.
You played some shows, there's stuff like that, but never officially. Okay.
Yeah.
But then that EP, that recording got a Grammy?
Wish has a Grammy, yeah.
Wish has a Grammy.
Yeah.
So you do one thing with them and you get a Grammy. Wow. That's the only time too?
Yeah.
Wow. What are the chances? You say yes to one thing and that's the one that gets you a Grammy. Who would have thought?
Plus, and that beat is based off of the beat from a Sweet song called Ballroom Blitz. It's like a snare drum shuffle. Just accelerated it, made it more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. Fascinating. And what did that feel like? What does it do to you? What happens to you when you get a Grammy? At least for you personally.
For me personally, it was never one of my ambitions.
Right.
Honestly,
I think you were my age when you got it too. 94, right?
Maybe, yeah.
I'm 35,
Yeah.
59. Yeah, 30, you're exactly my age, yeah.
But how I use it now is when I'm around music conservatory people who talk about reading and charts and all this other stuff. I like to defend some of my students who don't read. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I don't read. Jimi Hendrix doesn't read. Paul McCartney doesn't read. And I've got a Grammy. So fuck off.
Yeah.
You know? And that's what it means to me. And I'm not trying to be like, yeah, who cares? I don't know that I do really care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I think that's the right choice. Did it change anything? Was it easier to get Did it change anything with like gigs or bands? Nothing really.
No. It just I put it in my resume. You know. Mm-hmm. It might change things with a speaking gig, maybe.
Speaking or teaching, it might. Yeah.
You know. But yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Who cares about those Grammys? I certainly don't. Especially now, like, did they feel like they had more validity back then? Because now they feel like a joke.
Yeah, it's
like
all gone very political, and it's the same with the Baseball Hall of Fame. Pete Rose is back. You know, it's like
Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, get them in the Hall of Fame. Those guys made baseball amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Being a Cubs fan, well, growing up in Chicago, I loved Sammy Sosa. I mean, you were around then, and to see what
And now the Pope's a White
Pope.
Sox fan.
I loved it when I heard that, and I'm sitting here looking at
oh my
the
God.
Sox Stadium in Chicago, and to find out the biggest religious leader in the world, globally known, is from where we're from, where I'm from for sure. And he's a Sox fan, and I'm wearing a Sox hat looking at the Sox. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. I don't care too much about that stuff, to be honest, but it is kind of fascinating.
I have no idea how it's going to manifest itself, but it has to be something.
He's probably going to start getting Catholics to say dare. Like, hey, dare, hi, dare, ho, dare.
I wonder if he has to, surely he'll visit a game.
He's probably going to come to the museum. I want to be there if he ever does.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
How funny. The Pope is at your museum with you.
I can't talk now.
He's singing on the cassettes in the
I
basement.
can't talk now. The Pope's on the toilet.
Oh, the Pope is on the telly coming by. Oh, my goodness. So what kept you staying in Chicago? I know you like the vibe here, the work ethic, the artist here, but you lived in London. You lived in New York and LA, probably other places. Why stay? You've been here for now 35 years, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a beautiful city.
Sure is.
You know, when I drive up Lakeshore, I'm like, holy fucking
Right?
shit. Are you kidding me?
I'm
Do
a
we
little-
live here?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's
It's
like,
stunning.
is this the Riviera? You know, like, holy crap. And now, I mean, my roots and connections, you know, it's just where we are.
Yeah.
And I've had thoughts about moving elsewhere, you know, but my wife sold her, horse to move to Chicago. And so I think about that. I thought about maybe going down to Decatur and have a little farm, you know. But I'm so pleased we didn't do that 5 years ago because this neighborhood has really becoming quite joyful. And the idea of walking around a neighborhood kind of has echoes of London to me with the street vendors and stuff. So I'm like, I'm really pleased that we're still here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and something we didn't talk about, but you're also a professor at Millikin.
Yeah.
And when did you go to school and all this? Because you've been a musician and playing music forever since you were a teenager. So when did you have time to go to college?
I left school when I was 16.
Yeah.
And then straight into all of this mayhem. And I did so much touring with all of the bands on my label. We put together 3 buses, 5 bands, work permits, bringing bands over from Europe, 80,000 postcards with 10 different partners, piercing shops, tattoo parlors, you know, using all of we started one of the first street teams around the country, I think, to help us promote these things. So Columbia College asked me to teach the business of touring live entertainment, which I did. And there wasn't a book, so I wrote one, which is punk, right? And but it's a huge 600-page book.
You wrote a 600-page book.
Yeah, Tour Smart. It's
How long
the
did it
size
take
of
you to do that?
A year and a half, like maybe a year and a half. But lots of contributors, just like Pigface. But it's the size of an old phone book. It's huge. And I thought, well, that was interesting side thing. But then I start to get speaking opportunities based on that. I did South by Southwest 12 years in a row. I keynoted Melbourne Music Week the year before Albini did that. I spoken at Abbey Road in London and all over Norway 5 times. So, but in the middle of all of this, I developed curriculum up in Madison. Loyola in New Orleans wanted me to go and teach and to take over the program.
It's a great music school.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, great. And they loved, you know, all this stuff. And during the interview weekend, a bunch of people recognized me in the thing. Oh, my God, somebody asked me for my autograph. Oh, my God, this is good. I should have should have planted that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God,
Martin.
if only you were teaching it. Really? Oh, And but the guy's like, okay, and what's what's your bachelor's degree? And I'm like, well, I don't have a bachelor's degree. Like, okay. Well, what's your associate's degree? I'm like, I don't have an associate's. I left school when I was 16. And that was it. That was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they just couldn't, for all kinds of reasons, they couldn't make it work for somebody unqualified academically to teach something they were obviously qualified in the real world stuff of record label and touring. So I got my associates in audio up at Madison Media Institute, and then I got my bachelor's in entertainment media business.
What years were
I don't know, 20 years ago.
like early 2000s or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got my master's from Middlesex University online just because I was pissed off with people with master's degrees. Like, oh,
I hope you're not pissed off at me.
but it was like, they were aware of my real world credentials, but felt like, that's academia,
I having my feet in both, having the right degrees, the terminal degrees, and been teaching for a while, but been doing all of this the whole way. I see clear as day the bullshit on both sides of the aisle. The people who want to dig themselves into a hole and live that poor mentality of like, I'll never have anything. This is woe is my life. That's not good either. When you can get some things good out of life, even if you have a bad start, it's not your fault. But then the other thing happens, people in academia, these degrees, they think they know everything, and they have next to no real life experience. They have not been out there. They weren't touring. They didn't play in bands for 40 years. They don't know dick. But because they have a few degrees, they think they do, and that's problematic too. And being in both worlds, I get really annoyed with those kind of academics and administrators. And then I get annoyed with some people that are in that world, but they just kind of beat themselves down. They never want to pull themselves up at all. And both are not good. But at least they're trying to punch up because they're poor. Yeah. So it's way worse for people in academia because they have the education, the money, and the wherewithal, and they do it anyway. They behave that way regardless. So that's punching down. That one is much worse of an offense to me than the other side of it.
Right. Yeah. And there's insular thing. I think in the best case, universities should transform the city they're in and enable and connect and all of that stuff. And sometimes it's messy, and so people don't do that, which is also another crusade, is what we were talking about at the beginning of this. Like, you're still a member of the community, and how can you help the community,
Yeah, that's where I am too. A lot of folks want to overreach and they want to change the federal government or geopolitics or China. You ain't ever going to change that, but you can change your neighborhood, your community, yourself, your household, your neighbors, the old lady who needs help down the street. These things really do matter, and they really do impact. And you can actually manage your expectations that way. I'm not going to change the United States government. I'm just not. Neither are you. But you could change your neighborhood, Bridgeport, the museum. You could help people, give people inspiration. Yeah. And that permeates way further than trying to circumvent and go to the top of the you're not going to change stuff at the top.
Did I talk about the coffee bag I made?
No, not yet.
So
please do.
I learned. I was amazed. I'm still learning. When the pandemic hit, I have a few different coffees with dark matter coffee.
Chicago's dark matter coffee.
And I went to their coffee shop on Western just to see them as everything's closing down. And Jesse, who owns it, said, "We've got 50,000 pounds of fucking coffee. We need some money." 107 employees that needed to be kept on healthcare. Just a lot of stress. Nobody needed coffee. all the places they sold to, hotels, United Center, nobody. It's like all their coffee shops had to close, and so I put $100 in their tip jar. There you go. I was kind of surprised and frightened by how frightened and paralyzed they were. And I got home, I got back to my place, and I called one of my guys. I said, well, my first coffee was called Get the Fuck Out of Bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so it's like this command. I'm like, do that in a gothy lettering that says, stay the fuck inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I printed these brown craft bags, stay the fuck inside. And I made 300 bags. And 2 of my kids helped me. And some of the bags were good. Some of them were smudged with fingerprints, whatever. It's this homemade thing. And I signed the bags and I stamped them with the museum stamp. And I thought, I'll take these up to Dark Matter. And I nearly didn't, because it was like, here's my little art project. Bullshit. The world is collapsing, but I did these coffee bags. And they put them straight online with the Get the Fuck Out of Bed bag and the Stay the Fuck Inside as 2 for $50. And they sold 300 pairs that week. It's $15,000.
Wow.
And then I did some speaking for an organization called In Place of War. The talk was called Creativity Conquers Conflict. And I told these stories, and I'm like, what am I even doing? Here's people in South America, and here's a guy with like a DJ rig on the back of a truck, and he'd reverse it to a block of apartments and DJ for everybody on their balconies. And, and I'm like, what? Here's me with my story. But it helped some people to like this tiny little thing that gave some people hope for doing their tiny little thing that made a difference. And then a bar in Brooklyn, I've forgotten the name of it, but the owner of the bar called me. She said she saw me do the talk and then a workshop, how to make a screen. And she made a screen. And Tuesday afternoons in her bar, which is by the bay in Brooklyn, with an anchor, she had people come and help her print the anchor onto napkins, and then these bags with rope, because they were by the harbor, selling stuff for way more than they should have. But people would just, and it kind of helped them get through. So I try and be really open to presenting silly bullshit stuff, because sometimes it's all somebody else can do, and if silly bullshit stuff can work.
Yeah, it could save a coffee company possibly, or some people's...
or at least get it to into next month.
Yeah, the next month, the next week, the next day.
Month's bullshit.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's it, And so I love all of this end product of DIY mentality, starting a studio, starting a label, writing my own books, and just doing this stuff, not from a sense of conceit of like, well, I can do anything. Like, well, no, but I've done some stuff. I can very carefully work my way through this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes even things that you're not normally good at much easier. Or at least you could see how far you can go to do it before you had to call a friend to finish, like pass the baton. You learn your limits by doing as much as you can.
And now you can watch some YouTube videos, and
oh my God.
I'm still
so easy now.
But I've been screen printing since 1988, and it's like I should really get a couple of lessons from somebody, like I'm sure there's stuff. I know, like we were having water-based ink. When it was particularly dry and warm, it would dry in the screen and then the screen's destroyed. There's something called retardant. It stops the ink from drying as quick. I'm like, oh my God, who knew?
Yeah.
Well, everybody except me, So maybe I'll do a printmaking class or something.
Yeah, you should. I mean, if you've been printmaking for 37 years, I'm sure you know a thing or two about it.
Well, maybe.
Were you printing a lot of your own band merchandise? Is that why you got into it?
Yeah, and then scenery, and then the idea of custom printing. So when Genesis P. Orridge was out with Pigface, 96, we did separate shirts. Like we'd send a dozen shirts to each venue that's had a central theme. Fook Christmas. Fook was our album that year, and then the bar name. So the idea was the bartenders would wear them, and we didn't police that. I don't know if that ever happened, but just always trying to do something extra to promote. So like a month before the show, you see we should have printed the front and back. In retrospect, we just printed the front, or just the back, so you see your bartender advertising a show 2 months down the line.
The creative techniques you had to do before the internet.
Yeah.
All of it was just an analog version of promotion.
But we're back to that. The thing we did 2 weeks ago, I did a one screen, just a print with all the bands and the speakers and the elephant on a bicycle logo that we have. And instead of giving out flyers or telling people, we gave away shirts. And it was really wild because people were anesthetized to the booths in the Commons where the cafeteria is and Starbucks is. They kind of blink at themselves and get by because they don't want to talk to anybody about the blood drive or Plants Against Suicide or whatever the fuck's going on. And but by giving people shirts, people would stop, look at the different colors, and then you have a conversation. And then you're like, don't take this shirt if you're not going to wear it.
Yeah.
And so people were wearing the shirts the next day and the next day. So we're back to that, printing DIY, because you can't just put a graphic on a screen that changes, because that's what universities do. Nobody sees those.
Yeah. No. Yeah, and you've had your feet in both camps. You've been in a major label and independent label, and you've done major corporate stuff, and you've done extreme DIY stuff. Like far ends of both spectrums. What are some pros and cons to each one to you? Because you're one of the few people that have extreme experience in both.
And with books, I did my own book, and it's not nothing to print 12,000 copies of a 600-page book. That was
You printed that yourself?
yeah.
What?
Well, we paid for
Okay. Okay.
We paid for the printing and the binding, and I found a book deal based on how well that first book did, and I thought, now here we go. We're going to do this properly, and it actually the major book deal was the undoing of everything we'd built. Kind of, we were selling the book. It was $30 or $35. It cost us $7. So the margins were great. When we did the book deal, they sold us the book for $12 because that included their profit and my profit, which was fed back into the advance. But then they start selling to Amazon. So now my $35 book is $19 on Amazon. So I would get in my van and drive around and speak and DJ and, do 3 events in a day and really do some kick-ass promotion. Suddenly, I'm in a car park with students and I'm like, they wanted my book. And I'm like, well, here, it's 35 from me, but you could get it on Amazon for 19. I couldn't not tell students that. But now I'm losing sales when and our margin disappeared, and it wasn't worth me going back out again.
Yeah.
So I think I'm now close to, if we reissue 3 or 4 more vinyl albums in intricate, expensive handmade sleeves, glow-in-the-dark pieces of scenery from the 90s woven in, whatever. I'm within a year, I think we might pull everything offline. I don't mean for download, I mean for sale online, mail order, and make it like, if you want this stuff, come visit.
Come here, yeah.
And that I start to see a Spotify backlash, return to vinyl for sure,
Oh,
CDs,
for sure.
cassettes.
Yeah. Vinyl is huge.
Yeah.
The last 10, 15
But
years, it's
CDs
unbelievable.
now, like, but
That one's a little confusing because there's not much playback for it. Cars don't have it anymore. Computers
Right.
don't have it anymore.
But-
No one
but
in their house has one.
But maybe more so than vinyl.
That's true.
You know,
that is
but,
true.
But I think the important move is away from Spotify.
Yeah.
You buy the CD, you own it, you can play it whenever you want,
Yeah.
and you don't get somebody else's algorithms fed at you.
Mm-hmm.
And fuck that guy, honestly. I think I was 4 years ahead of the curve with my fuck Spotify T-shirt.
Oh, you had one?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's and I lecture about it as well. I ask my legal issues students, can I make this shirt? No, you can't.
Why?
Because you can't reproduce the Spotify logo.
Oh, I see what you're
That's
saying.
the first part. Then to print fuck over it, even it's my screen from 1988 where I made fuck T-shirts and fuck this, fuck that. That makes it worse. Now it's profanity. And my students will say, as long as you don't sell it, you might be in the clear. I'm like, it's on my website.
What's wrong with profanity? It's freedom of speech.
Not coupled with the Spotify logo that I've illegally produced.
Or the Swedish people.
Right. But I am selling it because that's my punchline. So it says on the webpage, if anybody from Spotify is reading this and worried, it's okay. Every time I sell a shirt, you receive 0.0000.
Yeah.
Bam. And
That's
that,
great. That's
Your Honor,
genius.
is my punchline because I'm a comedian. So, yeah.
Yeah. What about the? What are your thoughts truly on streaming? Not just Spotify, but all of them, and what they're doing to musicians, and how they're forcing musicians to do everything themselves.
Well, I think musicians have had to do everything. We always have. The Mekons always have. You know, all of us punk bands always did everything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think it's a bad thing if you're hand printing record jackets or hand folding posters to make the jackets. Because the next thing you know, somebody in your band is like, fuck this. You know, Steven's a fabulous crochet person. And you're crocheting the 7-inch sleeves or the cassette sleeves, and you're putting more of your personality into your product, which is the differentiator anyway. So I think everybody should be doing all that stuff all the time.
Yeah.
With some help, but I think too many musicians shy away from a lot. With booking, with manufacturing stuff, with making your own shirts, with anything. And I've done scratch and sniff, 7-inch singles. It's just, which leads to other things. And I think the more people do themselves, the more their personalities, they can find the brand of their band and then underline it, put a light on it, embroider it, literally, figuratively, become who they should be.
It's hard though. I mean, you probably noticed not everyone wants to do everything themselves. They don't have that craving, that constitution for it, the curiosity. I've always had it. I've always been flabbergasted by people who don't want to try to do something themselves. Maybe not everything, but just anything. They just want it done for them. They don't want to think about it. I don't get it.
But the problem is, it's like a street team. I don't know if that concept still exists.
Street team?
People around the country who help you.
Okay.
So it was clear to me with these huge tours we were doing, like, we need help. And so I just sent a message out on MySpace, who wants to help? You get a shirt and you get to come to the show. Well, that was like, wow, free help. Well, pretty quickly, you're involved with people's lives. And, I would take someone's phone call. Some street team kid in Denver just broke up with their partner. The electricity's being turned off. Like, oh, fuck. You have a conversation, whatever. The free help is more expensive than, right? And now you're in people's lives, which can be exhausting. But how lucky are you to be in someone's life who loves your music enough to distribute posters and call you and go, the venue still haven't put the posters up. Oh, that's really valuable. I'll call the venue. Thank you. You know. So, but then, so here's all this effort with people who obviously love you and want to help in any way they can. You can buy a street team. You can buy the service of a street team, but it's just a bunch of kids who don't care, who are going to put your flyers in the trash. You know, they'll take a picture at the record store. Here we are, you know, and they're there every week with somebody else's bullshit flyer that they don't know about or care about. So there is a cost to not doing this stuff yourself. And if your aspiration is for somebody to sign you, I don't know how you get there.
I don't either.
You know,
I don't know. I don't know why people just want something like handed to them. They don't want to figure out all the path themselves. That's what makes life fun.
But you're not going to get a deal without finding out how to book yourself, how to not be so much of an asshole, because I don't want to see, oh, you've done 60 gigs. Come back in 3 years when you've done 1,000 gigs. What? You know, because that shows me if you play to 10 people on a Tuesday and you go back to wherever, Columbus, Ohio, play to 50 people, you go back and play to 100 people, it's just telling me that the interband communications work, or you replace the person who didn't. You either inherited a Mercedes vehicle, or between three of you can fix a shitty vehicle. You're telling me all the things we need to know to even be worthwhile for me to work with you in the studio. I don't want to work on someone's album to have it not see the light of day and be disappointing. I want to come to your shows and sing along and watch you progress your career.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And as doing the label, Invisible, you said 350 releases. What are some of the responsibilities or things you do with the label? Do you like how does it work with your label situation as far as your relationship with the bands and what you do there for them, things like that?
Well, the label is actively becoming different. 2 years ago, we were reissuing things on vinyl, using screen printing, glow in the dark. We haven't done scratch and sniff yet, but blurring the lines between the museum and the label, and whatever's happening now.
Yeah.
All of that label side is starting to come into focus with reissues as we come across intellectual property and other things that I think would be intriguing for people to listen to, but there are rights issues that we're actively resolving. Or there are people like, I think, the Yeah Yeahs donated a track for a museum compilation, and then I got busy and forgot.
Really? That's awesome.
So we might kind of approach some people to go, hey, you know, do you want to donate a track for a double vinyl scratch and sniff, glow in the dark, fucking hand screened.
That's cool.
Double album to help the museum. So these lines are blurring. I'm still trying to help people I've been involved with in the past. And we're going through our archives to create. I had a band called Murder Inc. We just did 10 shows, signed a big deal with a label. It was on my label, then we signed a big deal. There's a double album reissue with a piece of the scenery from the show, which I kept for 30 years. That's on this thing with a certificate of provenance, but then a USB cassette with demos. So if you're into this band, here's this really deep experience. So we're starting to look at that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Because I think if you're a fan of a certain band, you want to go deeper and deeper and deeper with the stuff that's familiar.
Yeah.
And so that's becoming a thing that we can facilitate or enable another artist to do that with some of the materials that we have.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So it's kind of, but having the label was an eye-opening experience. Friends don't let friends start labels.
Mm-hmm.
Changed my relationship with some artists who fell into that trope of like, artist is good, the label's evil. Like, okay, so it became fun and a game and a necessary part of a band's situation to rip off the label, to slag on the label. You would think things might be different, but
Especially with a label like yours. I get feeling that way if you're signed to some billion-dollar label. I'd be like, yeah, screw. I would take their money and say, screw them. But now with an independent one that's like local, and so that doesn't make any sense to be that way.
but that's it. Artist good, label bad.
That's true at a certain level, but at the smaller level, that's not how it is.
But that's the mythology of
Yeah.
it. And when your head is in, when you think that you're 3 levels above where you are, and then if you do nurture someone, and to get someone from nowhere to somewhere is so much work. And then other people start to see it and it gains its own momentum. But it's very dangerous because when you help somebody, then the management team that wants to take them to the next level, it becomes their job to dilute the effect that you've had so they can take this and get a big payday.
Product.
It's horrible.
It's a product, yeah. They commodify people and turn into a product and sell them, and it is disturbingly gross, and it blows my mind that people want to go into that. Most people do. Like the way that you're talking, truly a person of the community, your friends, your artists, DIY, let's do stuff together, let's circumvent these corporations as much as we can. And someone like Steve was the same way. I don't know any other way to live to the point where it hurts me. Were there a lot of people like that when you were coming up, or were people trying to just, let's make it, let's get money, let's be rock star? Like, how many of the people around you had truly how you are thinking and feeling? Obviously, they're not you, but similar mindset.
Yeah.
Because I don't come across it in a pure, honest, true, realistic way that often people will talk it, but I don't visually see it lived for their lifetime,
Well, you see it in different areas with different artists. I had one, a trio. They made an album. In the first 20 albums we made, it was $23 was the cost. And included in that was a big thing of Folgers coffee. They needed 2 DAT tapes. I let them use my binaural sampling microphone and my TCD Pro DAT machine. And instead of moving faders, they moved the mic around the rehearsal space. I let them in my space for a week, and here's the album. But then other shit happened. Legal shit happened with some lawyers. Like, what? I mean...
Can't get the lawyers involved. They ruin a lot of things.
And it's difficult. And now I see it. I see it differently. I see people's aspirations and the cloudiness of that, the rose-colored spectacles, and it is what it is and what it has been. And I cut people slack. I'm trying because so many contemporaries are dying. Jackie Black just died. I didn't know Jackie very well. I met her a few times from Thrill Kill Cult. Steve, of course, Geordie from Killing Joke, Bill Rieflin, who we started Pigface together. I just try and get along with people.
Yeah.
And because not everyone, including me, is going to be around forever.
Yeah. Life is short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Before I don't know how much longer you want to go. We've just about 2 hours and 20 minutes.
my butt's hurting.
Your butt here? Okay, we could wrap up then.
Yeah.
Yeah. With wrapping up, any words of advice or wisdom to creatives, artists, musicians around the world in Chicago right now in 2025?
So the the creative problem-solving mindset is hugely valuable. And if you're creatively solving the problems of your band, your art, your music, that's a skill. That's why it troubles me when people are only solving the problems of the middle eight going into the instrumental. There's so many problems to solve within a band. But sometimes you need to step outside and use those skills to solve the other problems that have been thrown up around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so creativity will help you as long as you use it for more than just writing songs.
Mm.
And that could lead to other things in other areas that could sustain you to fuel your art and your music, But it's a continually evolving process. I think you need to stay ahead of the curve, and the curve keeps changing, So I like to tell students, remind myself to differentiate what you're doing. If you're just a band with some good songs, there's 110,000 songs every day being uploaded,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous.
It's insane.
And so Spotify has changed, and TikTok have changed the way artists present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So then do a 9-minute long song, that doesn't work, that takes 3 minutes to, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and fuck your own career before it starts. At least it's interesting,
Yeah.
Like I had this thing, Bizarre Sex Trio, and my friend did the original art for it with logo, and I hand screen printed 750 album covers. They're all completely different. And I would different colors original, and then I'd start dotting inks on the screen and pull so it's like rainbow stripes. Then I go like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to wash the screen because it's just brown ink.
Yeah.
So it's ridiculously time consuming, but like fucking hell.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking hell.
Yeah.
Major labels can't do that.
No.
They could, but they'd have to pay someone like me $25,000
It would be
to
so
do
expensive.
it. Right.
Yeah.
So find your creativity and do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do it to the max. And 7 years to be an overnight sensation. Think about that.
That's the average.
That's what I say.
That sounds like the average. Most people I know of any background that have been successful in something they do, it is around that time.
Right.
And sometimes, not in a jealousy way, but sometimes I do worry for humans when they get that fame way too quick, way too young. There's a part of me that's a little old manny, like you should probably work a little bit to earn that. Mm-hmm. But it's also just not really good for your psyche to get too much praise when you haven't literally walked up that hell ladder.
Right.
You got to do that crawl to handle that pressure that's put upon you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that happened to me. I mean, we flew to the States in April 1980 for the first show in Boston, and we had 9 or 10 shows in 5 weeks.
That's it?
Like, what the hell? We're at the Lenox Hotel in Boston. We had our own suites for 2 or 3 nights before the first gig.
Oh my
Like,
God.
what
a
the
waste
hell?
of money.
Yeah. And but there's a guy who plays guitar with Pigface once in a while. He was in a band called the Evil Mothers who opened for Pigface. And they literally ate our dust in a short school bus that they fixed,
Mm-hmm.
And that was insane and grueling and horrible. And then 5 years later, he's playing guitar. He's in the bus.
Mm.
And you could see him every day. He was like, yeah, And but I agree. It makes things sweeter when you understand how lucky you are to, I saw Rollins Band play at the House of Blues to not many people.
Really?
And
That's surprising.
and and I was talking to Henry and Chris Haskett. I think Andrew was playing bass, and they were just happy to be in a nice dressing room with a shower, and the vegetarians were taken care of by the restaurant at the House.
Oh, was this a long time ago?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant more. Okay, like in the 80s.
And,
okay.
They were just happy to have it sound good on stage, and because they'd been in situations where it didn't.
It was horrible.
Where there wasn't a shower, and
And House of Blues is a nice venue, downtown Chicago. So that's a big deal for people who are coming from the punk lifestyle, the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah, be grateful for the opportunities you get. Say when you're young, definitely say yes and try stuff because you never know where it leads. Right. I'm here right now with you because I've just kept saying yes to things. Right. You never know where it leads. Just do it. And you'll also know what you don't want to be doing anymore. You'll get an inside scoop. I don't want to do that job. Now you know.
That's Charlie Watts. He was asked, drummer from the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
He was asked, how do you learn from people? And he said, well, I can't learn from good drummers because I'm just sitting there in awe. He said, but I can learn what not to do from bad drummers.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, I understand that.
Yeah.
And everything's a learning experience. And you just have to, stuff we were talking about at the beginning, even if you can legitimately be outraged by a situation, shut up, be nice, be kind, and think about the other people around you. And even if you can legitimately throw a fit because of these three things that were not as they should be, what happens if you're like, it's all right, everybody's tired, everybody's busy, who wants a coffee? And that stuff is miraculous.
Oh, yeah.
I was treated like a king. 7:30 last Saturday morning, we had 28, 29 artists on 2 stages. And I show up at the venue with a box of donuts. And I'm sure everybody thought that everybody was so busy just getting there. 7 o'clock loading. I got there at 7:30 with a box of donuts. Like,
Yeah.
This guy gets it.
It's the little things.
It's always the little things.
Show up with a pizza, no one's upset when a free pizza comes through. Nobody.
Right.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for this. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
It's
it.
nice to hang.
Yeah, this is
a
fun.
few blocks from the museum.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do it more. And
yeah.
everyone, please check out Martin's museum in Bridgeport, the Museum of Post, Punk, and Industrial Music. Pigface is still doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you have any shows coming up this year or anything?
No, we were looking at some dates at the end of the year, but it's the 35th anniversary of the album I did with Killing Joke, the Extremities album. It hasn't been played for 33 years. There's one of the singles that they will play after I quit. So I put a band together, and we're going to perform the album November 28th in town.
Where at? What venue?
Reggie's.
I'm there.
Yeah,
down the street.
Yeah.
Very cool. So check out November 28th, 2025, Killing Joke, right?
Well, it's not Killing Joke. I'm calling it the Extremities Project.
Oh, okay.
Performing the Killing Joke album, Extremities.
Got it.
So it's Justin from The Locust, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, Tara from I Speak Machine, Stephen Sebald from Hate Department, Layla Royale on cello, Orville Klein running samples. So
heavy hitters, great people.
Yeah, and it's
Awesome.
kind of growing and changing and mutating as we put it together and take this album apart and see where it goes.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, keep your eyes and ears out for that event and anything in the future for Pigface, Martin's Museum. And yeah, if you're a young kid and you want to go study some interesting things, check out Millikin. Martin could be your professor. And then check out anything else he does. Martin's great.
You can
coffee.
follow. Thank you.
Dark Matter.
You can follow me. I am Flowers Fight for Sunshine on Insta.
I'm sure that drives people crazy. They're like, why aren't you just Martin Atkins?
I just wanted to be Flowers Fight for Sunshine.
I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Martin. Again,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. It was wonderful to talk to you, and your stories are a little mind-blowing, pretty cool. I hope people enjoy this, and yes, I'm excited
Thanks.
to have met you, and I'm glad that we got to do it, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone. Ciao.